Christ be with you.
And also with you.
There is a rumor that's filled the city.
He is alive, he is alive.
People are saying the tomb is empty.
He is alive, he is alive.
Just when it seemed everything was lost, in grief and a rugged cross, somebody said not to fear because he is alive again.
How can it be when we saw him dying?
He is alive, he is alive.
Yet his disciples are testifying.
He is alive, he is alive.
Out in the place where his body lay, there is a stone that is rolled away. Though there and see it is out today, he is alive again. He's alive. He's alive. The grave could not keep its hold on him. He's alive. He's alive. Yes, he was dead, but now he lives again. He is alive.
The angels rejoice and the demons tremble.
He is alive, he is alive.
My hope is new and my faith rekindled.
He is alive, he is alive.
Conquering death so the world can see. He is the Lord and the King of kings. Nothing's the same when your heart believes. He is alive again. He's alive. He's alive. The grave could not keep its hold on him. He's alive. He's alive. Yes, he was dead, but now he lives again. He is alive. He is alive.
Amen. That was great. Let's pray together. Well, God, open our hearts and our minds to the reading and hearing of your word today. And may the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts together be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they came to the tomb taking the spices they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed by this, suddenly 2 men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground. But the men said, "Why? Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen. remember how he told you while he was in Galilee that the Son of Man was to be handed over to sinners and be crucified, and on the third day rise again. Then they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all of this to the 11 and all the rest. Now, it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary, the mother of James, and the other women who were with them, who told this to the apostles. But their words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb. Stooping and looking in, he saw the linen cloths lying there by themselves. Then he returned home, amazed at what had happened. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
We have been reading through the Bible in a year as a church for the third year now. And every time we get to a particular story in the book of Numbers, I'm reminded of 4 women that I hate to admit to you and confess to you, I typically forget about after I've read their stories. But this week I was reminded again of these 4 women who I read it and I think, yeah, I love this story. It's Zelophehad's daughters. And they're named Mala, Noah, Hogla, Milcah, and Tirzah. They were the only children of their dad, which meant he didn't have any sons. They didn't have any brothers, which meant that by Israelite law at that time, the land would go to somebody not one of them. And so these 4 women boldly confront Moses, Eleazar the priest, and then a bunch of other dudes, and then eventually the entire community in front of the tabernacle, and they pleaded their case, saying, why should we not receive land because our father didn't have any sons? I'm paraphrasing, but basically they're like, give us what's our due. And Moses says, well, I'm going to take this to the Lord. And as a result, God gives a different decree and a different statute. It's a short story, but it's significant enough that it shows up late. It shows up twice in the Old Testament, but it's easily forgotten until it comes around again. However, it's worth remembering because it demonstrates God's providence and God's provision. It doesn't necessarily have a direct impact on us today because we don't live in a country where we wouldn't necessarily inherit what should rightfully be ours. But it's worth pausing and remembering because of the courage of these women to use their voices and the fact that it's recorded in a time when women were truly expected to be seen and not heard. It's important because, yes, it shows God's providence and God's provision for God's people, but it also shows the transformative power of God. And it's important because with this new decree, this very easily forgotten story, God ushered in a different way of doing and living in community with God's people. Now, unlike Zelophehad's daughters, I think we're a lot less likely to forget the women who went to the tomb on that first Easter morning. This is more of a central story to our faith. And if we are, all 4 gospel writers ensure that at least once a year, regardless of what version we read from, we'll remember them. I was a little slightly misquoted by Norm in the article. Luke's not the only gospel that gives us the names of the 4 women. Mark does as well, but Luke gives us more of the women. He includes the other women. So that's cool. But the whole story, beyond the fact that it includes these other women. It sounds like almost like a community of women that went to the tomb. Depicts a pattern that we know as disorientation, orientation, and reorientation. Faith leaders throughout the generations have taught about how this pattern can represent the transformative power of God at work. At the crack of dawn on the first day of the week, the women stumbled, disoriented by grief, probably exhaustion, towards the tomb. Sabbath ritual required that they wait to prepare Jesus' body. So they go the first chance they get. Stumbling around in the darkness of early morning, they notice that the stone is rolled away. Going in, they see that the body's not there. And Luke tells us they're perplexed by this. I got curious because this word perplexed reminded me of another woman that was perplexed. The young Virgin Mary at Gabriel's words and greeting to her. Remember how Gabriel shows up, greets Mary, greetings, favored one, and Luke tells us she's greatly troubled or perplexed. It sounds like these women at the tomb may have been scratching their heads, but I really think perplexity is often a stepping stone to a greater understanding of God. When we're in this perplexing, disoriented state, it's fair to say our defenses are down, right? We don't have the cynicism and the skepticism and the hard walls that are really hard to break through because all of the chips are down. So still disoriented, they see these two men in dazzling clothes, and then comes the question. The question for us today, why do you look for the living among the dead? Indeed, why do we? This question and its blunt honesty exposes a truth we rather not accept. Sometimes we like to pitch a tent and dwell in tragedy. Sometimes we stay right at the foot of the cross, forgetting that Sunday is coming, has come, and will come again. Did you know that every single Sunday is meant to bear witness to the resurrection? The early church people that did the church thing and started organizing us into buildings meant for this day, this worship service, to kick off a whole 51 more services of the resurrection. And yet, we don't want to look for the living among the living. We want to stay pitched in our disorientation. It's understandable. Life happens. Tragedy happens. Ups and downs and triumphs and tragedies occur, and too often, in the midst of our own stuff, we can come up against the glorious promise of the resurrection, and we just say no. We're not ready for that today, God. We're not ready for that new life today, God. And sometimes that's okay. If we can recognize Jesus in the midst of the disorientation with us and allow ourselves to keep moving forward, remembering the promise of today. The men in the dazzling clothes remind Mary and the other women of just that. Remember what he told you. These words aren't new, they seem to be saying. Don't you recall he said this at least 3 times? And then they're reoriented. They're drawn into this new understanding. That question orients them to go, oh yeah, we got it. And then having that orientation spurs them on to begin the journey of helping spread the word, the good news. They return from the tomb proclaiming the promise because they remembered his words. But we have the plot twist, don't we? They get to the guys, and I like this one too. It's not just that they don't believe them. I like the fact that they get to the guys and the guys think it's an idle tale. There are a lot of things that this sentence reminded me of. It reminds me of a story of a miracle. A woman went to tell her pastor, and he basically told her he didn't believe her. The miracle happened. She still has 2 beautiful children that are now adults. He didn't believe her. It was an idle tale to him, but she believed and continues to tell that story of that frying pan today. It reminds me of when I go to on a lighter note, it reminds me of when I go to the mechanics because my car's messed up and I can know exactly what's wrong with my car, but I go in the shop and I don't quite know what I'm talking about. I send Ash in and all of a sudden it's the same thing, right?
100%.
Every time. Same thing. I knew what it was. Mr. Joe the mechanic didn't believe me when I told him, but hey, I don't know what a non-alternator starting sounds like because I haven't ever had one of those dial on me before. Anyway. In all seriousness, we do have to give the guys a break on this one because it does sound far-fetched, right? I mean, not only was the body not there, that I think the guys could have wrapped their heads around. Okay, the body's not there, let's go find it. But if they told all of this, then they also included the story about these guys showing up in dazzling white clothes. Well, who else has done that? Jesus. At the Transfiguration. Peter wanted to pitch a tent. Maybe it was that part of the story that triggered Peter's memory. Wait a minute, I remember something about dazzling people. And off to the tomb he goes. He doesn't get the luxury of seeing those dazzling people. He sees linen cloths lying there. But it's enough. It's enough. He believes. He returns home amazed. The purpose of the Easter story includes demon-possessed boys, the devil, a bent woman, tax collectors and sinners, the losers like we talked about on Friday, hanging from the cross. You, me, voices that we'd rather not remember, voices that the powers that be sometimes want to silence. The promise of Easter is that God transforms all of that. Why wouldn't the women show up? Or why wouldn't the risen Christ show up when he did? I think for too many years, we've tried to put barriers around who gets to do the proclaiming and the naming. But Jesus did it. So why do we? As we started to do this new member process, we started talking about what it would look like. And a couple of folks had some concerns. Am I going to have to do this? Am I going to have to do that? Does it require this? And they were pulling back on years ago time of being welcomed into membership. And I told them my goal is to not make this something that feels like a bunch of hoops to jump through. My goal is that you see this as a joyful celebration of coming home. And here we are, coming home. New members, young adults returning, faces we haven't seen in a while, some worshiping with us online. We are home. So remember the women for their story. But remember the Easter story, and this is where I think that commentator that I mentioned in the call to confession was going. Exclusively reflecting and meditating on that first Easter can tie us down instead of understanding that first Easter as the beginning of the journey. As Easter morning being what propels the women to go and tell, that propels Peter to go see for himself and be amazed at what he saw. That Easter morning moves us to the road to Emmaus, where strangers spend a lot of time talking to Jesus, but it's not until they invite him to stay with them and then he breaks bread that their eyes are open and they recognize him. It moves us to Ascension and to Pentecost, the birth of the church as we know it. Easter moves us beyond the creedal statements to the witness of the risen Christ, alive and well, alive here in this small but mighty church. So remember the women for their role in the story, and remember that the story moves us forward. The promise of Easter is that God's not done. We don't stay at the cross. We don't stay at the empty tomb. We don't even stay on that first Easter morning. God is still doing new things. God's not done with you yet. Period. Flowers still bloom. New careers still come to our doorstep. God still shows up and shows out. The promise of Easter is that neither the cross nor the empty tomb are stopping points. Our faith journeys continue even as we remember and retell the story. But all God's going to say. Amen. We've already done the Apostles' Creed, so we don't have to do that again. We'll have a moment, pause for a moment of musical offering.